Hey folks, welcome back to another edition of My Car Guru. Today we're going to be busting some myths, some car myths, things that you always thought were true, or maybe you didn't, but somebody you love did, and they just aren't true. Say it ain't so, Lenny. Well, I'm going to say it is so. What prompted this little discussion was a customer situation. You know, we try to use real live examples on this show, keeping in mind, for those new listeners, I am a new car dealer. I have a Ford dealership and a Nissan dealership in Greenville, Tennessee. And I've been doing this for 47 years. My dad started it, and his dad started him in the car business. And, you know, it's just a family thing. My kids work for me, so, you know, we're in it to win it. And this program is designed to help you prevent you from making, you know, just bad decisions, car buying decisions, servicing decisions. Then a customer came in and he said, I need a tune-up. Now, what does that mean? Well, to him, he's from my generation, baby boomers. To him, a tune-up is to replace the spark plugs, the spark plug wires, probably the fuel filter. You know, we have electronic ignition systems now, so we don't have points and condensers and stuff like that. Maybe the air filter. And so what did my service advisor do? Well, he must have been in a hurry because he bypassed our procedure. He wrote on the repair order, tune-up. And that was a mistake because in this particular case, the owner's manual and the repair manual calls for replacing the spark plugs. That's pretty much it. Previous repair history in our system showed that the vehicle had never had a tune-up, never had the spark plugs replaced. Does that sound like a tune-up to you? Boy, it doesn't to me. You know, but that's kind of what it was on this vehicle. And so he had already had air filters and fuel filters and stuff like that changed. So that's what we did. He gets the car back. Drives it down the road, comes back the next day, says, my car's still missing. Well, he didn't say it was missing. He just said he wanted a tune-up. He felt like a tune-up would cure the miss. That's called self-diagnosis, and that is a problem in the auto repair business. Are you a self-diagnoser when it comes to car problems? If you are, I'm not trying to create any ill feelings here, but you're probably an older male, maybe a 40-plus male, because no males under 40 know anything about cars. That's not true. There are plenty that do, but there are a whole lot fewer that do than used to. Now, if my service advisor had been on his toes, he would have said, sir, if you don't mind my asking, is there a performance issue, fuel economy? Is the car sluggish? You know, what is making you believe that a tune-up will cure what it's doing? And then the customer said, well, it's got a miss. I feel like it's missing, you know, like it's got a hitch in its giddy-up, as they say around here. And this is not an uncommon thing that I guess customers and service advisors do, is this self-diagnostic thing. Somebody said, yeah, I want new brakes on my car, or I need you to put some Freon in my air conditioner. Boy, that's a common one. Of course, they don't use Freon anymore, but still they have different types of refrigerants, and sometimes they leak out. And so we're not just going to turn around and put Freon in it. When it comes to brakes, we're not just going to automatically put brake pads and turn the rotors and give the customer a bill, and then he drives off. And first time he puts on his brakes, it's got the same thing going on. It's because it didn't need pads. It didn't need the rotors turned. The customer didn't need to spend that $268. No, it had a problem in the master cylinder or the brake booster. Something else was the problem. So what is an advisor, service advisor? Well, I mean, the title pretty much tells you what they are. The problem is that most of them aren't capable of advising because it's really hard to find a lot of younger people or even older people who are getting into this industry and have the ability to dig down a little bit deeper and find out what's really going on. I see a lot of customers do this on their own. They go online. If they have ChatGPT or Perplexity or just Google, they can type in a description of what their car's doing and all kinds of things will pop up. I don't know that that's not a wise thing to do. I think I would do that. I mean, let's see, I'm trying to think of the last thing I had that I couldn't figure out at the house. There was something that I figured on, or I watched a YouTube video. Oh yeah, it was our new $300 swimming pool. I could not figure how to attach some type of a skimmer that would clean up the bottom of it because it was getting all kinds of debris and flies, and so it just had a lot of stuff that was settling on the bottom. And I wanted to hook up the pump to this thing that I bought at Walmart that would kind of sweep the bottom and suck up the debris. Well, it wouldn't suck. I hooked it up. I hooked it up to the pump. I ended up hooking it up directly to the pump. Then I watched the video. Well, it showed how it worked on the video, but I just couldn't get it to create enough vacuum to pull anything. So I had to take it apart, put it back in the box, and take it back to Walmart and say, this doesn't work. And if I just read the instructions, that can be a problem for me. Sometimes I will not read the instructions. Aren't you going to read the instructions, Lenny? Well, honey, this is simple. I can do this. Yeah, right. This pump does not have the power to provide suction for a whatever, some type of a sweeping tool. You have to buy a different pump for that. Well, that's great. Now I'm going to have to spend another $300. I'm going to have $600 invested in this swimming pool. If I get a new car, as complicated as they are, as expensive as they are, especially when they break, I'm going to take note of the maintenance schedule, the recommended maintenance schedule. Have you ever looked at that on your car? Or do you just drive into the dealership and say, yeah, I need to do this, I'm here for an oil change and so forth, and you don't really track it, make sure that they're doing the right thing? No, you need to look at that maintenance schedule and see what's recommended. Now, a lot of you are going to look in your maintenance schedule. It's going to say change your oil every 7,500 miles or when the light comes on. Now, my wife, for the last 3 days, has been driving around in her Expedition with a light that says, change oil soon. And I said, honey, you want me to take the Expedition in to get the oil changed? No, I need it today. Okay, can I have it tomorrow? Well, sure, you can have it tomorrow. So I brought it in. And at what interval do I change my oil? Well, it says every 7,500 miles. I've never gone that far changing oil. And it's simple for me. I go 5,000 miles. Every 5,000 miles, I change the oil and rotate my tires. And that makes life good. It's easy to remember. 7,500 is not, and I'm not going to sit around and wait for a light to come on. So you have to make that decision too. Make the call. Do a little bit better than what the factory recommends. That's what I always recommend. And if it says replace the cabin air filter every 6 months, then do that. I mean, you may not even know that you have a cabin air filter. Do you know that? Do you know that in most modern cars there is a cabin air filter? What does that do? Well, it keeps all the pollen and crap from the outside getting inside your living space. I think that's important. If it says replace the air filter at 20,000 miles, do it. It's not that hard. And then at trade-in time, you can pull that book out and say, look here, I did every single thing that needed to be done. Matter of fact, I changed my oil more often than what the factory recommended. As I've said many times before, you know how that makes me feel as a guy who's trying to trade for your car? Makes me feel good. This customer takes care of their vehicle. And I can open up the doors and the rest of the evidence is right there in front of me. Are there stains all over the seats? Is the floorboard full of old McDonald's bags and other unspeakables? If it is, it creates doubt. Doubt is not good. All right, I'm going to take my first break. I'll be back here in just 1 minute. Okay, so I said I was going to talk about myths That's one of them is the fact that, there are certain intervals that you have to abide by, and they're the same as they were 50 years ago, and they're not. I mean, one of the myths is that you need to change your oil every 3,000 miles. That's unnecessary with modern oils and modern engine technology and the clean fuels that we use now. You don't need to change your oil every 3,000 miles unless you're, always on dirt roads. You're in the construction business, and you're really putting your car through its paces, or your truck. Or you're doing a lot of off-road stuff, having a lot of fun jumping over things. You might want to change your oil every 3,000 miles. It depends on use. Premium fuel, is that something you need to run through your car every now and then? Heck no! That's a myth. Premium fuel is for high compression engines. And if your car required premium fuel or even wanted it, it would say that in your owner's manual, or it would say it when you open up your little gas door. It says premium fuel required. You better use premium fuel, because if you don't, you could damage your engine. Regular unleaded, or 87, 89, 93, 120 octane. These are all different things that you need to be aware of, because as time goes on, if you repeat bad behavior over and over and over again, then eventually there's going to be a price to pay. I mean, we know that with our own health, don't we? Okay, another myth is, I don't need to rotate my tires. They look fine. So you can actually see tire wear with your eyes if it's really bad. But if it's just starting, if it's marginal, if it's just scuffing a little bit on the inside of the tread, which you probably never see anyway, then you don't know if your tires need to be rotated, nor do you know if you need a front end alignment. I recommend that customers get their vehicle's alignment checked at least once a year, because you're going to hit a pothole. You could possibly bend something. Your alignment may not have been right from the get-go. I've actually driven a new car, going down the road, new Ford, steering wheel's off center. I'm going straight, but the steering wheel is off center. That drives me crazy. I'll actually make an appointment to take it back to the dealership to get my steering wheel straightened. It's got to be level when I'm going straight. But I'm also going to have them check the alignment, because if the steering wheel's off center, does that necessarily mean that the alignment is off? No, but it could. And sometimes they screw up in the factory. And I don't want to wait until I get 12 or 15,000 miles on my vehicle and the outside edge of my tires, or the inside edge, is already worn out because I haven't been rotating them. So it's important to rotate your tires. Do you need to rotate your spare, into the mix when you are rotating your tires? No, you don't need to do that. Just rotate front to back, and that's all you need to do. Now, if you have a performance car like my Porsche, for example, it has different size tires on the front and rear. So I can't rotate my tires. I'm not going to go from one side to the other, because they are unidirectional. What's that mean? They only go on one way, and they rotate one way. I mean, they would rotate the other way, but they're not designed to do that. They could fly apart when I'm doing 150 miles an hour. On a racetrack, of course. But I don't know, folks. People just don't take their tires seriously enough. Because, that's your connection to the road. I don't want them to be over 6 or 7 years old. I'm going to replace them. And I don't want my tread depth to get, beyond like 4/32 of an inch. The experts say, well, your tires are worn out at 2/32. No, they're not. They were worn out long before that. That's hydroplaning danger right there. That's, the first snow not be able to go anywhere. So make sure you have adequate tread depth. Your tires are wearing evenly, that you're rotating them every 5,000 miles when you get your oil changed, and you will be a happy camper. Let's see, what's another one? Oh, hand washing your car, yeah. Is hand washing your car always better than using a car wash? Depends on what kind of debris you have on your soft mitt that you use to wash your car with. If you're not careful, and let's say you accidentally lay down you're hand washing your car in your driveway, and you're so proud and everything, and the first thing you do is drop the mitt on the ground, and it picks up a couple little pieces of sand. And then you just start rubbing again all over your car. Not good. You could scratch your vehicle that way as well. I'm just extremely particular about certain vehicles of mine. I will drive my F-150 through the car wash maybe once a month. If my guys at the dealership can't get to it, which is pretty often, they're pretty busy in the detail shop, then I might go through a car wash once a month. But that's excessive, really. Maybe 6 times a year would be better. But that's just such a beast to hand wash. I mean, it's a complete workout. Now, my Porsche, I'm washing it. I'm not letting anybody else wash it. And I'm going to make sure that I don't pick up any grit, in my little mitt. And when I dry it off, I'm going to make sure that it's very clean. There's just certain things, certain cars that if it has scratches all over it, it's going to dramatically affect the long-term value of it. And it's just my buddy. It's time for me to replace the air filters at my house, our HVAC. Last time I pulled them out, my wife said, well, those don't even look dirty. I said, I don't care. It's time. And that's the way you need to look at it too. You can't see the microscopic dirt particles. Maybe they just got light colored all of a sudden. Who knows? But you change filters at intervals, regular intervals, and that way you don't forget. You just don't put it back in there. Well, it doesn't look dirty and it's $13. I'm going to put it right back in there. No, don't do that. Do brake pads need to be replaced whenever they start squeaking? Not necessarily. Why is it squeaking? Is it down to the wear sensors? That's what you need to know. Every brake pad in any vehicle has wear sensors. It's basically a little curved piece of metal that's attached to the brake pad. And when the brake pad wears down, then that piece of metal will eventually touch the rotor, the spinning rotor. That'll make a squeaking noise, metal on metal. And it will make a squeaking noise whether you are applying your brake or not in some cases. So there could be a number of reasons, but for goodness sake, if you replace your brake pads, do not put aftermarket brake pads on your Honda. Put Honda brake pads on it. I know the other ones are cheaper, but they're not that much cheaper. Honda's pretty aggressive. All the manufacturers, they want you to buy their OEM parts, and they know that customers will only pay a little bit more. They'll pay some more for OEM parts. I would. I'm not putting aftermarket brake pads on anything. For example, if I trade for a Honda, I'm putting Honda brake pads on it. I'm not putting O'Reilly's brake pads on it because I know that the customer is not going to be happy because they're going to squeak. So, yeah, brake pads, go with the OEM, original equipment manufacturer. Okay, what's another myth? You don't need to check the coolant on your vehicle until the car overheats. Of course, I don't know if anybody ever really thought that. Yeah, you want to keep an eye on your coolant for sure. There is, your coolant is in your most of it's in your radiator and in your engine. Okay, it circulates through it, goes through the heater core. That's inside your dash, and that's the fan blows through the heater core, and that's where the heat comes from that heats the inside of your car. But there's also something called a coolant overflow tank. And if there's, as things get hot, they expand. And some of this coolant is pushed out into this tank, and then it's drawn back into the cooling system whenever the pressure changes. So that coolant overflow tank is supposed to have a certain amount in it at all times. If you see that there's none in it, then your system is a little bit low. And that's one of the things you don't have to necessarily drive to a service department to check. You can raise your hood and see that. I would want to know where my coolant overflow tank is so that kind of gives me a first indication that I might have an issue. Another one is just your nose. If you smell coolant, it has a sweet smell. It's unlike anything else. I mean, it doesn't smell like donuts or anything, but it definitely has a sweet smell to it. And it is also deadly to pets. So, if it's dripping on your driveway or on your carport and you see little Fuzzy walk over and start licking it, it could be fatal to them. So it's something that we need to keep an eye on. Okay, I'm going to take my last break, and I'll be back here in just a second. I printed out a list of myths, and I haven't gotten to a whole bunch of them, but one of them was kind of funny. He says, you don't need to replace your timing belt if it's not broken. That's laughable. If it's broken, your engine is destroyed. Folks, if you are driving an import car and a lot of domestic vehicles, you need to know if it has a replaceable timing belt. That is actually in the engine. You can't see it. If you take the front cover off the engine, then that typically gives you access to the timing belt. And basically what the timing belt does is that it makes sure that the valves do not come in contact with the pistons, because the pistons are going up and down inside the engine, and the valves are going up and down above the pistons, letting air in and exhaust out. And you can imagine what it would be like if a metal piston comes in contact with a metal valve. It's going to break. And when it does, that's metal in the engine, and within a matter of seconds, the engine is destroyed. Well, why in the heck do they make timing belts out of rubber? I don't know. I've never been able to figure that out. Obviously, there's probably a little less cost involved in making them out of rubber. Plus, it's a maintenance item that can generate income for the manufacturer as well as the dealer. So maybe there's an ulterior motive there. But timing belts stretch out over time. They get old, they get brittle, and they break. And if that happens, then you're going to buy a new engine. So if in your owner's manual it says to replace the timing belt at 60,000 miles or 75,000 miles or 100, those are typical intervals, you better do it. That's not one that you put off. I would never buy a car without knowing if the car has a timing chain, which is non-maintenance item, or a belt, which has to be maintained and replaced at a certain interval. I checked. I've got 2 vehicles in my shop right now that had over 150,000 miles on them before the timing belt broke. One of them was able to get their car stopped soon enough and didn't destroy the engine. The other one is getting a new engine. And it's not covered under warranty, unfortunately. Well, we got to a few of the myths. The more that we get to, the more money that you will save in the long term and make your car life much more enjoyable. Thanks for listening. If you need me, send me a text 423-552-2020 or an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com. And I'll see you next time.